How should I use AI? Chatbots like ChatGPT. Large language models are already good at a wide variety of tasks. In today's newsletter, the fourth in our 5-part series, I'm going to try to convince you that large language models are already good at a wide variety of tasks and they're getting smarter every day. In the previous edition of this newsletter, my colleague Kate Metz wrote that large language models, LMS, can be erratic and unreliable, giving false information and acting strangely toward users. I've been using AI tools like ChatGPT almost daily for several months now, and I've seen them spit out plenty of wrong answers. And don't remind me about my creepy encounter with Bing. But I've also seen these AI programs do amazing things, feats of creativity, flexibility and efficiency that took my breath away. And I worry that in an attempt to tamp down AI hype, skeptics are missing what's so groundbreaking and potentially disruptive about this technology. Large language models write poems and screenplays. One of the latest, GPT-4, scored in the 90th percentile on the bar exam and got top scores on a number of advanced placement tests, and the potential productivity gains for workers are enormous. In one study, programmers who used GitHub Copilot and LLM for coders finished a task 56% faster than programmers who didn't. Here are 6 things that AI is especially good at right now. Explaining concepts at multiple difficulty levels. For the last few months, I've been using ChatGPT as my personal tutor every time I get curious about a new topic. If it's, say, fractional reserve banking, I'll start by asking ChatGPT to explain fractional reserve banking at a high school level. Or, if I'm still confused, at a middle school level. ChatGPT and other AI chatbots do well with these types of prompts, using their skills at natural language processing, as long as you don't ask about very recent events or extremely obscure topics. Calling on an infinitely patient, zero-cost tutor to guide me through new subjects feels like a superpower. Used properly, they can be amazing teaching tools, editing and constructive criticism. I still write my columns, including this newsletter, myself, but over the past few months I've enlisted ChatGPT as my assistant. When I'm stuck, I often paste in a few sentences and see if it can spark any ideas. If I'm trying to tighten an argument, I'll ask it to poke holes in my reasoning. Continue reading the main story. I've found that Bing is particularly good for editing, because it can look things up on the internet. One of my favorite writing hacks is to ask it to read Strunk and White's The Elements of Style and suggest edits based on the book's principles. You can use similar tricks to use AI to improve your emails, cover letters or any other writing you are working on. As a reminder, you should always check the AI's work carefully. Getting creatively unstuck. AI can also be a good tool for getting your creative juices flowing. Recently, I was trying to come up with questions to ask a podcast guest. I pasted the guest's bio into ChatGPT and asked it to give me 10 thoughtful, incisive interview questions for this person. Of the questions it generated, most were pretty good, and I wound up using a few on the show. Ethan Mollick, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, recommends using AI to overcome writer's block or get a running start on hard projects. A person who wanted to start a bakery, for example, could ask ChatGPT for a list of all the necessary equipment and permits. It is very easy to get distracted from a task by one difficult challenge. Mr. Mollick wrote in a recent blog post. AI provides a way of giving yourself momentum. Rehearsing for real-world tasks. I've also been using ChatGPT and other AI apps as a kind of rehearsal for offline tasks I find unpleasant or hard. When I had to have a difficult conversation with a friend, I asked ChatGPT to take part in a role-playing exercise. Pretend you are my friend, and react the way you think my friend might react, I told it. I then held a mock version of the conversation. It didn't make the real conversation painless, but I felt more confident knowing I'd already practiced with a chatbot. Of course, chatbots can't replace human friendships, but they can be a kind of on-demand sounding board, offering us basic feedback and advice without judgment. Spark notes for everything. One of the most powerful abilities of AI language models is quickly summarizing large amounts of text. I've used AI programs to read long articles for me and summarize dense academic papers. Usually they get the broad strokes right, even if some of the details are missing. This power really shines when you combine it with other AI abilities like transcribing audio and video recordings. Suddenly it becomes possible to condense a 2-hour podcast into bullet points or get a concise summary of a work meeting while you are still in the meeting. If you are bored of reading this newsletter, you could ask ChatGPT or Bing to summarize the rest of it for you, or to rewrite it as a jaunty limerick. I promise I won't be offended. Coding, even if you don't code. People are already using AI to write code, whether or not they know any programming languages. These models weren't designed to write software, but when they were trained on vast amounts of internet text, including the contents of coding sites like GitHub and Stack Overflow, they learned how to code, a phenomenon known as emergent behavior. Now, if you type in a prompt like "build me a Chrome extension that translates the text of any website to pirate speak," you might get back the code for an app that actually works. In the past few months, social media has been full of examples of astonished people who are using AI tools to build websites and apps faster than any human could, at a tiny fraction of the cost. What's next? All of this raises some pretty obvious questions about the future, such as, if LLMs are helping non-writers write well, and non-coders code well, what other kinds of powers will they unlock? And how many jobs will these new AI abilities eliminate? Tomorrow, Kate will be back to wrap up this series with a look at where all of this progress may be headed. Your homework. What other chatbot skills can you discover? Think of a task that takes up a lot of your daily brain power, like a tedious chore from work or coming up with a weekly dinner plan to feed your family. Then work with a chatbot to see how well it can perform. Last week, The Times spoke with people who use ChatGPT to have more productive conversations with their teenagers, concoct imaginative bedtime stories, and draft love letters to their spouses. And Hard Fork, The Times podcast I co-host, featured stories from listeners who are using AI to negotiate their rent, understand medical results, and affirm their gender identity. As always, share your best, worst, and most interesting results in the comments. LLM. OpenAI plans to up the ante in text AI race. The company unveiled new technology called GPT-4 4 months after its ChatGPT stunned Silicon Valley. The update is an improvement, but it carries some of the same baggage. 4 months ago, a small San Francisco company became the talk of the technology industry when it introduced a new online chatbot that could answer complex questions, write poetry, and even mimic human emotions. Now the company is back with a new version of the technology that powers its chatbots. The system will up the ante in Silicon Valley's race to embrace artificial intelligence and decide who will be the next generation of leaders in the technology industry. OpenAI, which has around 375 employees but has been backed with billions of dollars of investment from Microsoft and industry celebrities, said on Tuesday that it had released a technology that it calls GPT-4. It was designed to be the underlying engine that powers chatbots and all sorts of other systems, from search engines to personal online tutors. Most people will use this technology through a new version of the company's ChatGPT chatbot, while businesses will incorporate it into a wide variety of systems, including business software and e-commerce websites. The technology already drives the chatbot available to a limited number of people using Microsoft's Bing search engine. OpenAI's progress has, within just a few months, landed the technology industry in one of its most unpredictable moments in decades. Many industry leaders believe developments in AI represent a fundamental technological shift, as important as the creation of web browsers in the early 1990s. The rapid improvement has stunned computer scientists. GPT-4, which learns its skills by analyzing huge amounts of data culled from the internet, internet improves on what powered the original ChatGPT in several ways. It is more precise. It can, for example, ace the uniform bar exam, instantly calculate someone's tax liability and provide detailed descriptions of images. But OpenAI's new technology still has some of the strangely human-like